It's kind of weird that they attempt to say that we're scrolling when they're the ones that couldn't even be bothered with responding to our case. How can we respond to something that didn't even exist? Okay, let's get into it. I think really this debate and how we can win it is if we're actually able to explain how this manifests in society. Specifically then, is it going to be silent or is it going to actually manifest in a way that's actually discussion? But I feel like the case that they've explained to you about why they can still talk about it shouldn't even exist. That's not the burden that exists for them. The self-sacrifice has to be self. It's not about something about making a compromise and then the sacrifice occurs. That's no longer self because you've already included another person into it. The self-sacrifice exists because it manifests just in yourself. Before you came to the decision about making that discussion, you've already decided that I'm going to sacrifice this job. I'm going to sacrifice my love for the stability of my family. I think if you're able to believe that, then we have already kind of won this debate. The way that they try to get around the sort of framing that kind of already is unresponded to is to say that maybe some gender-neutral norms already exist in society, but I think just weigh up against all of the other counter-narratives that we've given you, which are significantly stronger. That is the historical context that we've explained to you, again, unresponded to, about why women have a higher burden to do this, because a lot of this sort of narrative already piggybacks off of other narratives that already exist, like women should sacrifice for their children, that women should sacrifice their love in order to be in a relationship in itself. I think if you just compare the other narratives that are very strong, that have been unresponded to, you should probably believe that the gender norms material isn't enough for them to break that deadlock. Second, and more importantly, they say that the conversation occurs after the compromise. Again, this is stuff that I explained to you in my introduction. We already give you good responses about why the model is about conflict resolution, because in schools you're taught specifically then how to come to a compromise so that you don't have to make a sacrifice before that decision actually occurs. You're able to have a healthy argument about something when they didn't really respond to this. But second, honestly, we just cop all of the stuff about breaking up, because for some reason they tried to make an independent path to victory about why we're able to sustain more relationships. We actually don't really care about that. If they were able to have a healthy argument and nothing was able to come to fruition, people weren't willing to give up certain things, then we think that is actually fine, because that wasn't self-sacrifice, which is what this motion is about. That's being able to say that there are two sides, they weren't able to do something, and then they're moving away from it. The delta in this debate is actually when the discussion occurs. The fact is they haven't been able to explain it. To say this further, let's take Grace's example about the women wanting to stay at home. On their side of the house, the women wants to get back into the job, but they never explain that to their husband. They never tell that to their husband because they've already self-sacrificed, right? They've already given that up in their minds. They've allowed it, maybe they deliberated for a long time. The fear has already built up. And then on our side of the house, obviously we have an argument, we have conflict resolution, the stuff that we explain in our model. For those reasons, I think we've already kind of won. They try to keep coming over this by saying we don't have fear. I think they've kind of misunderstood that. I think we kind of do, and we've given you good reasons from Fiona why that is the case. Finally, then, their last Hail Mary, in order to win the silencing of the in order to win the silencing of the discussion itself, they tried to say that you're going to talk about your virtues and it's kind of bad to boast about them. I think the easy way to respond to this is that the virtue is something that is moral. So first off, boasting about your morality isn't usually a normal thing for people to do. You don't hear people going, I'm a really righteous moral person when you're in a relationship. I think if you believe that sort of framing, it already doesn't exist. But second, morality is usually something that people just feel good about on their own. They don't really need the validation. A good Christian does something that is good. Maybe they talk about it to God in a church, but they don't need to explain it to someone else, because in their own heart, they already feel that this is a particularly good thing. I think the reason that we've been able to prove then that why a lot of this is going to be silent is for the things that we've already explained to you. One, that a lot of these people have a fear of losing that relationship, right? The things that Fiona explained to you. So that means they're probably going to bottle it up. And in their worst case, what that manifests on their side of the house is breaking up over small misunderstandings, is maybe even cheating. I think these are the comparatives that they have to be able to deal with. But second, we explain why they're likely to be silent isn't even, if you completely forget about the narratives, it's also just the framing that parents parents don't really talk about this. Another thing that was unresponded to. Because if your parent, like if your mum wants to go back into the workforce and your dad doesn't agree with this, there's no inherent reason for that parent to tell their 5-year-old child about it. And that means that majority of people have kind of been grown up in a household where it's already kind of taboo to talk about these things, or at least for the parents to discuss it with their children. In the terms of like the self-worth that we actually get for women, then we actually have discussions. We explain to them that that you don't have to be this loving, caring woman that has to be able to sacrifice everything for everybody else. All of those things actually go away. The tipping point in this debate then is that the reason that this norm in particular is quite effective is because it's actually about making the sacrifice itself. All the other narratives that they explain to you, that they try to frame as our case, about the types of things that you should give up, i.e. you should give up your romance for the relationship, you should give up going to job for your kids. But specifically then why this is a tipping point for us is because this narrative is actually about making the sacrifice itself. That's what makes it so important. It's why we're the only team that can win this point. Finally then, they also try to explain that maybe you're going to get guilted by other people. Obviously this is highly situational, i.e. if you were a bad person, you were going to do this anyways. If the grandparents really wanted you to have grandkids, it didn't matter if this norm existed. They were going to pressure you to do it anyways. I feel a lot of this guilt stuff is also piggybacked off the other narratives. So if you believe that already, and you believe that the other narratives fuel this one to make it stronger, then by getting rid of it, then we also get rid of the other people that have a prejudice that makes them more likely to guilt them. Finally then, they also try to explain that self-sacrifice is definitely something that you need. We've already explained good conflict resolution will be taught. That the vice is about talking about it. The long-term relationship in the future is important because the more that you bottle it up, the more that you don't talk about it is when it becomes something that is incredibly harmful. The humiliation that they explain to you about self-sacrifice, they keep talking about how people are going to judge you for this. I think really just doesn't exist because I think for most people, they don't really judge on your relationships. Like, I don't think there are a lot of instances where people actively try to look into your relationship and try to see the things that are wrong and the decisions that you are making. All of their analysis lies on, like, for some reason, everybody just talks about their relationships in a way that is incredibly intimate. I think for that reason, you can't believe that. Their last way that they attempted to win was to say that there are many ways to be virtuous, and this isn't something that is specifically that good. I think what we've been able to explain that sacrifice is a virtue, but not sacrificing is a vice, which means that it's still not very good, that the vice of the harm still exists. The media tells you that this is incredibly romantic. The media, the entertainment that you watch explains that if you don't do this, you're an incredibly horrible woman. And note, it's always the woman that has to sacrifice. Unless they can actually prove to us why women, for some reason, are better than this debate, which has gone completely unresponded to in this point, then we win on the scale. We win on the vulnerability of all the women who have to bottle up their desires.